Welcome to the Explorers Podcast with Ken Bowen. Here, Ken connects with friends and peers to discuss issues in the world and practices to improve one's biblical perspective.
To be with both of you, and I'm looking forward to our time in Washington.
Yes, we are too. What are you preparing to talk about in Washington? I'm really excited to know that.
Okay. I did a book called The Angel and the Voyager, and it's on the artwork of Thomas Cole. And I was so struck when I went to the museum basically in Washington, the Museum of Art, and and when I went there in July of 2018, I saw those 4 paintings for the first time. It was the Voyage of Life paintings. Okay, and it was about the 4 iconic images of childhood and youth and adult and then old age. Oh. The whole cycle then of being the birth, growth, decay, and death. And I pulled that out. And then he did another series of paintings called The Course of Empire. And that too goes, but it looks at an empire and the birth, growth, decay, and death of an empire, of a nation. Of course, we know that that's of an annual nature that's built into a fallen world, so that you have this whole dynamic of birth, growth, decay, and death. Oh. And then you also have a human life being that process, as well as a year being that process. And what most people miss is a day in that process, where every day has its birth, growth, decay, and death.
Yes, that's interesting.
I'm fond of telling people that this very night, when you're going to go into your after you were born this morning, then you begin to build up. Some people require more caffeine than others, but to build up growth. Then you they begin to decay. You may get a second wind, but this night you're going to go to your burial chamber.
You know what that reminds me of is C.S. Lewis's idea of the Corn King.
Yes.
Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, the idea of that process, of that inevitable process of radical diminishment. So what I'm actually using in my book, The Angel and the Voyager, and I'd be glad to send you a copy if you'd like.
Of course, that'd be great.
Yeah, let me do that, because it would be fun for you to have anyway. Because I use it as a glorified gospel tract. It's because it's beautiful, and I use film, I use literature, I use poetry, I use all kinds of things to look at the seasons of life and the cycles of life as themselves. And I think it's very helpful for people to have. So I'm going to be basically exegeting those paintings a little bit. It's going to be fun to do, but I'm going to make a note to send you.
Yes, that would be fantastic to get. It sounds, and I like that it's visual too.
It's a terrific, it's a terrific thing to do. The Angel and the Voyager. And so I use paintings like this. And so I'm going to be actually pulling things out. And so when I'm looking at this idea of childhood, and it's so extraordinary. And so I'm able to draw on that and so forth, and then have an image like this, so I can point this thing out here and look at this image here of the hourglass here, and the symbolism and all these other things, and how it's directed, and the angels looking at it. So I can compare all the paintings you see and actually take them through and then compare them with the next paintings. And so I work my way through that. So it's great fun. But essentially what we're doing through these 4 paintings, I'm taking them through. So why are we here and where are we going? Memento mori in the cycles of life, Celtic crosses, and music and poetry, and the cycles, Cole's art and faith and so forth. And then I go into the ocean of eternity. So it's actually a beautiful book, as you can see. The layout is
yes, I love it.
Yeah, it's really nicely done, and so that's how I actually can convey it. So I'm going to be taking him through his artwork like that. It's kind of fun.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'll send you a copy of that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what Malcolm Guite is going to talk about?
That's an excellent question. I loved his Mariner, and the Samuel Taylor Coleridge. So the Rime of the Ancient Mariner is such a wonderful book. I'm hoping he talks on that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Actually, though I love Coleridge, I have not had a chance to read that. But did I tell you the last time we talked that he was one of my examiners?
No, you did not.
Yes, that's how I know him.
You were very blessed to have such a
Oh,
that's a,
100%. We actually, the first meeting, I think he was on his way to do something with the G.K. Chesterton Institute or something in Oxford there that he was either chairing or heading up. And so we met at Blackwell's for tea. And that was like the first time I'd ever met Malcolm.
Wow.
And then I reached out to him later that year and asked if he would be an examiner. And my Viva Voce was really an intense and enjoyable time with Malcolm, kind of heading it up.
I can imagine that, having him in the Viva Voce like that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was great fun.
As you know, I had that Oxford experience that you had many years before. I'm much older than you are. So, but we were there from 86 to 88, and we even owned a house on the top of, in Headington on Divinity Road and Morrill Avenue. And so it was on the top of South Park. It was a magical place.
Oh, man.
And it was a great experience that we had living there. And so, you speak fondly in your book, The Beauty Chasers, of your time there, and express your love for the walks that you took and so forth. And so we were privileged to have very similar encounters and experiences that were really quite remarkable. And when I think about that, so if I look at my house, this is our house in Oxford, you see,
wow.
And it was a kind of a magical place.
Wow,
and,
what a garden!
It had a great front garden there, and the rear garden as well. And so I look at these photos and I realize, my gosh, I was a very privileged man. This is looking,
yes,
yeah, because this is they would call it in Oxford, as you know, a one-off, and it was this is a view from my study window looking down on the front garden. That's amazing. This is a view from my daughter's rear window looking across the street at South Park. So it was truly a magical experience that we had together, and I treasure that. And as did you. You had a unique experience that shaped you, didn't it? And the people that you encountered in your time, and you really took full advantage of that in your books, in your writings.
Yeah, it's hard to. When Chris and I talk about it, it's kind of hard to articulate in the way that you want to. Like, it's kind of like a photograph that you take of like the Grand Canyon or El Capitan. You go, it's just so amazing, but the photograph doesn't hold the amazingness that you want to articulate. And it's the same as talking about our time, just 2 years in Oxford, but it really had a significant impact on us individually and on our family. And it was a teaching time for us, not just in when I was studying with Beauty and Lewis, but like actually living through understanding the beauty of pace, the beauty of simplicity, those kinds of things that went into, like you were saying, the ability, instead of going, jumping in a car and zooming around from place to place as we do in America, we just walked everywhere. So time slowed down. It was a really profound time for us.
And it struck me that you really treasured it and lived it well. Mm-hmm. That it struck me that you were kind of enjoying your recollections and teasing them out. And I felt I was with you as I was reading your book, and that was a very well crafted. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at as well Christine's. I got a chance to look at Regaining Our Wonder this summer.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And I truly love what you did there, and this wonderful statement by John Ruskin.
Yes. It's one of my favorite statements. With Tim just studying beauty there, I felt like I was, even though I wasn't getting my PhD, I felt like I was kind of, through him learning so much information. And he constantly was telling me things that Ruskin said. And that quote in particular just stood out to me so much. And just what he was saying, I feel like a lot of what we have done as a family is built on what we call our Oxford rhythm, just the things that we learned there with beauty and wonder. And our girls were very young when we were there. They were 1, 3, and 5. And so it was so formative for us as a family to come back here and just like not lose the things that we learned there. Mm-hmm. Like Tim was talking about pace and stillness and quiet. And so that's just been foundational for us. So when I wrote that post, a lot of that was just the outworking of what we have together learned as a family through our time there in Oxford.
I think that's extraordinary. And what you did is you carried it with you. And so your children are now the recipients of that experience, even though they were too young to grasp it. Yet you created a culture that you carried with you. And now you're conveying and purveying and also in your teachings, and you're trying to make it attractive, because the beauty is such an attractor, isn't it? That you're drawn to that.
Go ahead, babe.
Yeah, it really is. And it's so cool when you see it in your children, because they notice things that no matter what, if we're in a car and there's a sunrise or a sunset, they're pointing it out. They're noticing it. They're not as engrossed with phones and digital stuff. They just really are aware of nature and what's around them. And I really believe it's a lot of what we have learned just through our time in studying beauty and its importance.
It's profoundly important for people to have that exposure, and it's becoming more and more of a digital realm in which people are now disconnected from the analog wonders.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you move against that current then in our culture? And you've been writing on this, and I think of that you are creating a kind of an oasis, a creative oasis for people, almost like an experiment. This is what it could look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's funny is a friend of ours, after we were finishing up in Oxford, and we were thinking of like what we would do or where we would go, he said, Tim, I think wherever you're going to be somewhere doing something that is going to literally draw people into the beauty of what you're doing, or being in a place where you can inspire inspire people to kind of experience what you experience. And I think, when we sit and talk about what we're doing with our writing or our teaching, we are hoping to draw people into a place. Literally just, I think it was yesterday, I had posted something on Instagram about the importance of pace, and someone DM'd me and asked, he said, what is this idea of pace that you're talking about? And what's interesting is that idea, the pace, for Chris and I, is something that we talk about a lot, but now I'm finding out that people really don't understand what you mean by a pace of life, or, even pacing in a book. Like when you read a book or there's a good novel, it's paced really well because it moves in a way that kind of draws you into the story. And the pace is part of the beauty.
Yes.
But if you read or experience something that is too fast, that is kind of annihilating space and time, there is no good pacing that kind of breathes life into anything. It's annihilation, is what C.S. Lewis would say. So the pace of life is an important thing that we try to talk about. And it's hard because it's very countercultural when you're talking about, hey, limiting yourself as people who, have, whether it's young kids or we have teenage kids now, to limit what we do, where we go, because we have opportunity to do so much, and then we think we have to do it, or it's part of our culture to do it. But we are trying to push back and say, no, we don't have to always be going and doing. We can be in a place where we can actually think about what we're doing, and also be aware of our surroundings. Right now we're looking outside. Well, there's blinds up, but there's a beautiful trees outside.
Yeah.
And like people just don't even notice where they are in their environment. And that has to do with pace, because we're so busy and we're so fast and loud, those things get lost. And that's because of pace.
Yes. There's no silence, there's no solitude, and as a consequence, there's no depth. And so need to train ourselves to see things. It seems to me that the three needs for our time are first of all, beauty, as you've just been saying, because we live in a context of the uglification of everything, as Peggy Noonan calls it. But then there's also the second thing I think we need is the area of truth. I actually have it on a little thing like this, that truth is the narrative, an authentic story that's embedded in space and time, a lived experience that expresses what it means to be the truth. And then third, the authenticity of goodness, where there is something authentic rather than the posing and preening and posturing and positioning of social media, where they just have these thin experiences that are not authentic at all, but they're just little devices to create and curate a false self.
I like that that authenticity relating to experience, and I think Malcolm recently, I can't remember if this is on his Instagram feed or if I saw it on a video of him teaching, but he was talking about the importance of the numinous
Yes,
as one of the, a key factor for our culture,
that's
and
right.
this idea of the sense of the divine. And I
Yes,
think that maybe relates to what you're talking about there with the authentic experiences. Because if we don't have, if we are, like you were saying, with whether it's social media or these paper thin experiences that really we go from one to the next to another, if we have all these stacked up, but then you have one deep experience of like that's more numinous or divine, maybe that even stems from your understanding or your interaction with the narrative of truth and beauty, then it brings this, like what Charles Taylor calls the roundness of life, right?
yes,
The roundness of meaning in the spiritual life that we were meant to live.
yes. It broadens and gives us broader horizons, a broader context, a broader narrative, a bigger vision. Um, I've also thought about three sources of beauty, and I wanted to run this by you since you've been so the beauty chasers that you are. So,
Sure.
I see the world, the word, and our response to the world and the word as being three sources of beauty. The beauty of the world, which is largely overlooked even by most believers. They take it for granted or do not have an acuity for the mysteries on the micro, midi, and macrocosms. The beauty of the word, which is, in my view, the beauty of the world points beyond itself to the truth of the word. And so it's a backdoor to the Bible. And so it speaks to that, and then our response is to the world, and the word would be the arts, the sciences, and worships. And again, it seems to me that we're kind of deficient on those areas. First of all, most believers haven't trained themselves to do what you're trying to get them to do. Notice, see, stop, slow down, receive, touch this flower, feel this bark, and have these tangible experiences that are, as I see it, it's outside in, and then the word is inside out. So by which I mean, as I see it here, when I talk about spheres of excellence, I talk about the physical realm is outside in. So the natural beauty becomes the gateway. And it's quite a mysterious idea in which we are actually using our sensorium, aren't we? And we're using your senses to amplify. And the visible points to the invisible, because it seems to me that God has ordained his world in such a way that everything in the created order points beyond itself to moral and spiritual truth for those who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. And if that's true, but most people don't see and hear. So that's what I see that you are on a great mission, a great mission, get people to open their eyes and behold, and then to wonder and to be and have that sense of the liminal, the numinous, the radiance, the thin spaces that you're talking about here, that hold those places that you're trying to create an environment like a greenhouse in which that people would actually have that experience. When I take people on walks, for example, I show them how to look at nature. They don't know how to do it.
They don't.
That's so true. We were just talking about that because we recently did a course, and it's on marveling.
Marveling, yeah.
And what was it? A Methodist? You talk about it in your book.
A Methodist pastor would lead his congregation out into the fields and the forest, and they would spend time like looking things. Is it Ruskin who says, when you look hard at something, it looks hard back at you?
Looks back at you, yes.
That's
yes,
the hard.
yes.
That's the.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go
but
ahead.
like, now it's impossible for me. I try to walk on our trail every day, and it's impossible for me to just walk it and not see now that, we've learned all this. I mean, even a mushroom, the details within a mushroom just point back to the creator behind it. And I just we have so much passion, to get people to marvel and to see.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's a question. I was just talking to Chris about this, and you might find this comical, Ken. But I was chatting with Chat GPT because I wanted to know what the AI thought about beauty being objective or subjective, and I was asking it about Kant, I asked him, like, are you with on Kant's side where there isn't anything ontologically in things, that it's actually the perception of the person. It's that we're all experiencing something when we look at nature or a work of art. We are experiencing it. There isn't necessarily something in that thing. So I asked AI about it, and Chris and I were talking about it, and I go, because she was just saying, we see this mushroom, and you were saying something similar, where when you look at the mushroom or the painting, and it points beyond, it points to the invisible.
Yes.
So my question, and it's kind of like maybe a little side tangent thing, but it does that created thing, for example, does it possess beauty? Like, is beauty something possessed in the object, or is it something that is natively within all of us in our experience? Like, I think Kant says it's the communis sensus, like the common sense of us. When we look at something, we all possess that thing that says, hey, this is an experience universally understood as quote unquote beauty. So what do you think? Is it something in perception, or is that pushed to go beyond the thing? Is it in the thing, or is it in the thing and beyond?
I kind of think it's a both and.
That's what I said.
That's what Chris said.
Yeah. You'll find that as you get to know me more, and I'm going to be like you a lot insofar as I'm a both and rather than either or person. And I love to have a tensioned interplay of what I call respiration, because everything in respiration is homeostatic, and it's back and forth, and it's a conflict between two goods. I actually call it euconflictual conflicts, because the power of story is conflict, as you know. And if heaven has no conflict, then what will it be? It would be rather banal. You see a story that began well and ends, and they're still happy in the middle and they're happy in the end. Well, that's not nice, but it doesn't have much. But I think I've coined a term, euconflictual versus disconflictual. And so when you think about, for example, the homeostasis, let's think about the electrolytes. And so you have the bodies constantly needing the sodium and calcium and potassium, and it's hundreds of times a day it's regulating, but they're both needful, they're both goods. So it's a euconflictual respiration that needs to constantly being modified, moving constantly. If it stopped, you'd be dead. Right. So you need that conflictual interplay in one hand. But to answer your question another way is to say that I think that these three definitions of beauty, radiance, proportionality, and wholeness, give us a sense of actually how, and radiance particularly to beauty as a raw thing, and proportionality to the idea of truth, and then goodness, it's shalom. It is things that are rightly ordered in a homeostatic way, but in a wholeness, a rightness, a balance. So in my thinking, it's the same as the question of is there nature, mathematics in nature, or are we just making it happen? And it's both. It is mathematics, but we have the mathematic capacity as bears the imago Dei.
Yes.
To actually be able to receive and to respond to that. So in my thinking, it's the three. It's a both and. So yeah,
that's exactly what Chris said to me. I'm like, because I gravitate towards the either or. And over time, I've learned to kind of like relinquish that a little bit and do both and. I agree. I think I agree with you. And to your point, or to what you said, your statement before about what we're kind of doing, like creating this greenhouse. I think you're right on with that. I think, once you start talking, and I'm sure that you probably run into this, but when you start talking to people about their imagination, about what they're seeing, like how they experience wonder and awe, and like I've asked people, even we spoke over the summer at the Charlotte Mason Institute, and we were talking about, I was asking people, like, have they experienced awe in their church? Have they experienced wonder in their relationship with God? Things like that, where people aren't even thinking about those things. It's very much transactional.
Yes.
And even our faith has become that way. So I see like the problem in culture of it being consumer driven, very thin, kind of plasticky. I see that, as a disease.
I'll be with you in a minute.
And I feel like that what we're trying to do is to help people kind of cure that disease and like open up things into their lives, into a world that's dimensional, that has depth, that
Yes.
we're not just going through it at speed, but we're slowing down enough to see all the dimension that we are living in currently. And even the wonder involved in a marriage relationship or with your family, and like thinking about how our imagination interacts with the things that we watch and listen to. We're constantly talking to our daughters about that. And it's so fun now that they're teenagers, because I did this even when they were younger, but now we have these great conversations, and they kind of start them now about the value of the imagination
Yes.
and what they're experiencing and how they see their friends, some of their friends who are on their phones all the time. And I've heard them even say like they have no imagination, or how it affects them. So
They're absolutely right. It's a great diminishment, but imagination's the organ of meaning, and it seems to me that it's been said, and I think it's correct, that attention is a moral act, and so what you attend to really affects it. Really, your attention is affected by your intention. So what do you seek becomes the biggest question. What do you long for? What do you want to see? And if God has revealed himself so decisively, though it's a fallen world, by the splendor of the micro, midi, and macrocosm, wouldn't it be wise for us to notice that wonder and train ourselves to see and to realize we are surrounded in the immensity of things we can't even begin to comprehend. So how do we train people to notice things that others don't notice? It becomes this hard thing. When I look at a flower, the hibiscus, for example, and the stigma and the style, and I see and I remember feeling this particular hibiscus. It was outside of a restaurant. Nobody would notice it.
Right.
But I not only noticed it, I felt the thing and the texture, and just this bark on a crepe myrtle, and I felt it, and it was an extraordinary experience, because it drew me in, and the infinite variety of asters. This is in our front yard, and these beauty berries, and they're just marvels. And
They are.
I had a group of people, and they were with me, and I said, "Here, let me get you a cluster of beauty berries. Put them in your hand, and then imagine if they were this big, like the size of a beach ball. How marvelous they'd be!" Now, and I took it. Now take one and pop it, and they popped, and the liquid came out, and they realized, my word, I'm looking at this spherical marvel. So the luminous, the radiant, that's not found in most churches. It's not found in most people's experience of the natural world, and it's not found in their experience of it seems to me of what they need to have. So you and I want the Spirit, we want the Scriptures, we want the sacraments. It's it comports with really, as I see it, the beauty, truth, and goodness again, that we need to have all three of these things. It's quite extraordinary. So how can we get people, train them to see what others don't notice, and to appreciate the three sources of beauty in the world, and then the beauty of the Word, and then the beauty in art? And because the beauty in the world is seen by attending to it and enhancing our imaginations, which is what you're training people to do. By word and deed, you're actually training them. You're creating I think that God has called both of you to create a kind of a context, a working lab, a model, an exemplar. And he's called you to that creative capacity that both of you share together synergistically, it seems to me, where you're able to create a compelling and winsome and desirous context and make people want that. And then you can have the authority to say, here's how you can begin, and some things that you can do to make that happen, both in the world, so they appreciate the world around them, but also the presence, God's beauty in his presence, the beauty of his presence, which people miss. They don't practice his presence. And the third thing, they don't have as much of an awareness of the arts and the sciences. And so, so I think I would just affirm that those are really powerful things, especially in an age where people are becoming more lonely and isolated and disconnected from the glories of the wonders of the world.
Well, I would I want to thank you for saying that. I mean, we were just kind of talking about it before we got on here, just about what we're doing. And, I'm working on my next book proposal for the follow-up to the Beauty Chasers. And
Yes.
it's really encouraging to hear you say that. And it's, again, too, we believe with you how important it is to not only just to learn these things and to talk about them, but then to model them, like you're saying, that you see and just what we're doing. And like, I'll give you an example of the lack of attention in culture. I was speaking a couple years ago to some people in Kansas City, and I was talking to them about curiosity and talking about how it has really died, especially in adults. And I asked them, hey, why do you think pelicans glide so close to waves as they, when you're at the shore, like just they can glide for over 40 miles, just
Amazing.
gliding.
Yeah.
And none of them, I go, have you seen it? And they say, yeah, we've seen it. I go, well, did you inquire about it? And they were like, no, we didn't. And we don't know why. And I didn't give them the answer,
Yeah.
but I'm like, what has happened to our curiosity? Like, we're at the beach, but we're not even paying attention, to your point, Ken, of where we are, the beauty of the moment, and even what's in front of us, like your beauty berries or the hibiscus.
Yes.
You don't see this thing of wonder, this beautiful large bird cruising on waves. Like, why is it doing that?
Yeah.
That whole idea of why is kind of
Yeah.
has vanished away, especially from adults. It comes more natural to young people.
That's correct.
Who might answer that, but even more so now, we're finding that young people don't even care to ask why, just like adults. So that's kind of like our mission, I feel like.
That's a great mission, and that's why I'm going to confirm and affirm that you, because you feel like you're kind of agents in an alien world. It's a strange thing. You're trying to bring them back to reality instead of this digital seduction.
Yes.
But there, as you know, I speak about this idea of two naivetes, and I'm sure you've heard that idea. The first naivete being childish, and I put away childish things. But very few adults achieve the second naivete of childlike wonder. And I define childlikeness as the inability of being bored.
Yes.
You see, you know what I'm talking about. I don't think you could be bored because look at this and look at that. And so why did we stop playing and drawing and imagining and so forth? And so there's something died in us, but I believe we can, through intentionality, recapture that sense of wonder by opening our eyes and seeing. And that's what I think you're trying to do in your quote from Ruskin as well that you were talking about. It seems to me that there are these three forms of beauty then, that one is created beauty that God has made, the second is corporate beauty, and the third one is creative beauty. This is brand new for me, so I'm just trying it out on you.
Created beauty, corporate beauty, and creative beauty.
Yes. And so again, it's very much like the world, the word, and but now I'm thinking about corporate beauty. I'm thinking about relational beauty, the beauty of holiness, you see.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about the idea of beauty in terms of practicing his presence and also sharing that in a collective whole with other believers. And so I'm being amazed at his glory that in which we're immersed. We don't understand a single leaf, let alone an insect or a bird, but we're surrounded by mystery. I don't understand a molecule of water. Now, I'm a scientist. That's my background. So the more I learn from science, the more I see it. So we have this Museum of Created Beauty that we're working on. But then the third one is creative beauty. Again, it's the kind of beauty that we create in response to that. And I think that all three are largely being marginalized by followers of Jesus in ways they don't grasp the world. They don't grasp the presence of God, the practicing in the routines of life.
Yes.
And third, they don't grasp the use of true beauty in the arts.
Yeah, I think I will affirm all three of those. I'm really interested in the corporate idea because I think that is one of the biggest. I mean, at this conference I spoke at in the summer, we had a breakout session and where we were talking about the scandal of beauty in our culture, and I brought in the church with that. And I get this often, Ken, like you would, well, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but I got a lot of pushback on whether or not we should spend time creating corporate spaces that push our attention to the divine, to God through beautiful spaces and places. A lot of pushback, like actually arguing. And I was like, and that for me, and obviously we've spent time in Oxford and have been places where we have seen, cathedrals or like embodied places where, even though it might be quote unquote dead spiritually, like people meeting there, the actual piece that was created itself is still a testimony to God and to beauty. But we get a lot of pushback from people corporately, and meaning like the beauty in corporate spaces, or being pushed to see the beauty in the divine. People just don't have, it's almost like they don't have time for it, or they emphasize maybe evangelism more than they do the beauty of the divine, or pausing, or having time for quiet, and like you said, practicing the presence. I really find that we're almost spiritually anemic as the church because of these things, where we've become so transactional in our faith.
I think that's correct. I think it's transactional, and also it's almost like the Cromwellian era of just getting rid of all beauty and just making it flat. And so the removal of all the reredos and all those wonderful art things that were irreplaceable in the name of evangelicalism was a great tragedy. And the greatest beauty, art, and literature and architecture and everything was created during a theistic consensus. And to walk away from that is a profound diminishment. It's one of the reasons why I love Antonio Gaudi's Sagrada Familia, because it's organic. And he takes this clue as an architect from the natural world where there are no straight lines, but you see the cathedrals as well, and they're glorious and marvelous. And these minimalistic things that we meet in these dugouts, in these basements, in these barren things, in these Bauhaus monstrosities, it's inimical to the biblical vision. I think a strong case, and I'm right, that can be built for saying that nature is intended by God to be a force multiplier of worship and awe and mystery and transcendence. And that's and you can see it. We're commanded to do that, and yet we don't take it seriously, and we don't see God in that way either. And so it's a vast diminishment. It's when I think about the attributes of God, it's the same thing there. It's most theologians are too left-brained. So here's the typical list of attributes of people that I read in the books. Here's my list. My list is that. So I'm going to go from there to there. You see. So I've added things that I don't see in the typical list. Why don't they have the mysteries? Why don't we have him at craftsmanship? And why don't we have dance and in mathematics and architecture and narrative, the greatest storyteller ever told? And then I even can compare any 2 or 3 or 4 of these things and have a rich way of seeing how do they all connect together in a mysterious way. So I think most theologians are just, I fear we limit ourselves too much in many ways. So I'm just applauding that you are countercultural and moving against the current, but you're trying to say there's something better, something more beautiful, something more wonderful. And I think you have scripture on your side to demonstrate that it should be done with beauty and excellence. Whatever you do in word or deed, do all with the name of the Lord Jesus. Do it well. If you're going to make a piece of furniture, do it with excellence. So seems to me that your mission is, you feel like a voice in the wilderness, I bet, many times. Yeah.
100%. Interesting that you used that theologians are more left brain, and I'm sure you're familiar with Ian McGilchrist's work, The Master and His Emissary.
Exactly right.
He talks about how our whole culture has become left brain.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Right? That and that God created, and he even talks, I'm not sure his faith background, but he talks like a Christian, but he talks about how we are whole brained.
Yes.
And how we need that right brain to actually make sense and meaning in the world. And if it's true, and I think you are right, I think theologians have kind of been, I guess they've been almost mentored by society, and everything has become left brain, where there isn't this idea of mystery or the luminosity or radiance or beauty or joy in a lot of what you read in theological works these days. It just doesn't happen anymore. And that's a byproduct of our culture. And it does. We talk all the time about literally we used like wilderness voice, or like a voice crying in the wilderness.
So I just use the word that you're using. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, 100% we are.
I like that. But that's all right. You're called to a particular mission, and God will determine, and He'll create an audience for you that's needful, but it'll be disproportionate, and you won't know your impact because it'll be largely hidden, as is best for all of us. But the left is a good servant, but a poor master. So it is a good servant. So I came up with this crazy list of things of kind of what I call spectral cognition, the whole spectrum of cognition. Imagine rating yourself from a 1 to 5 on a specialist versus generalist, and you could be a 5 and a 5, or a 3 and a 3. What would your capacity be? Okay. An analyzer, synthesizer, academic. I came up with this as a kind of a heuristic device, and I found it fascinating because although I'm about equal on both sides, I find that when I describe myself, I use these terms.
Oh,
I do not use specialist, analyzer, academic, rational, linear, binary.
Academic, binary.
Yeah, but rather I use a generalist. I'm a synthesizer, relational, intuitive, nonlinear, both and mystery, artistic, qualitative, contemplative. And so both have their place, but one I think provides the meaning context for the other.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I totally agree. I love that.
Yeah. I'll send that to you. My spectral cognition ranges. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And it's really very good. I'm sending it to you, writing it down to send it to you, because I think we're going to have a lot of fun together. We resonate, I think, in the same way, and you're doing some amazing, wonderful things. And so God's called you on a clear mission. You feel like you're a cultural subversive. You're almost like an agent of another kingdom, and you are. And so you're talking about this bringing the transcendent into the immanent, the numinous and luminous into the ordinary and apparently secular. But actually, the secular becomes spiritual when the focus of your heart's the eternal. So it transmutes it into another form altogether, and that's what I think that you're called to do.
Oh, I will say a yes and amen to that word, and because it's actually very encouraging for Chris and I to hear that, and she can speak to it if she wants. But I mean, we're excited to spend time with you, and to further these kind of conversations, because it frankly just inspires me. Even as we're sitting here talking, I'm like, I can't wait to, even though I want to keep talking, I'm like, I can't wait to get off and write some notes down that are, it's creating some ideas in me, even as we're speaking. So Ken, thanks so much for the encouragement and just speaking into us and what we're doing.
Well, the journey's just begun. As a scientist, I now look at the metaphor of our bodies, and we're in, as you move from the egg, and when you're thinking about a butterfly, the egg to the larva, which is the caterpillar, and then to the pupal stage, which happens to be the chrysalis. And most people don't know that it liquefies, as you know, it liquefies, and it creates an entirely new body plan. But I didn't realize until recently that there are lots of instars, even with the larva, where there's different caterpillars, and then the next one, and it molts into another, and a larger, 6 of them often. It's just more elaborate, and it's more exquisite and wonderful. No one gets it, how the thing liquefies and creates a new body plan. And then and so I have a caterpillar imagination, because my body is to the resurrected body as a caterpillar is to a butterfly. And I've never seen a butterfly, but I know one. And so, and we're told that our bodies will be like his. And so just think about and I use the same metaphor. I think we are in a caterpillar cosmos. And I think that the butterfly, that it's the same, but it's mighty different. It's both. It's a both end. The same analogy. So I think that the journey has just begun, and it's going to be fun to see where it takes us in this life and also into the next. But you are on a mission to restore biblical vision of shalom and of wholeness and of integrity and of both-andedness, living in a tension interplay between good things, so that there's a respiration and that you have an openness to nuance, and you don't have to. Instead of looking for answers, you're looking for awe.
Oh, yes.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
a great way to put it. And I resonate with that because I think too much sometimes we want answers instead of like resting in the presence, and which is when we experience the awe.
There you are. There you are. So being open to awe and realizing, stop asking God questions, the why. You can't understand even if he told you, but rather understand. He didn't call you to understand him. He called you to trust him. If I can't understand a molecule of water, and I can't, and anything you look at, it's a mystery. What if I spoke to you then? If I spoke to you of earthly things you didn't understand, what would it be if I spoke to you about spiritual things? And so I think we have an analogy in that in Scripture.
Yes.
But the point is, wait till we see what's to be. So I have a caterpillar imagination in this world, but it's going to be better than I can imagine. So the best goods of our past are hints of better goods to come that we cannot yet name. And it's that whole idea of the weight of glory, as you know, and the whole idea of the Sehnsucht and that longing for, but it's not the thing itself. It evokes a greater thing that you can't yet name. And I love that.
Yes. So I guess C.S. Lewis would not have been on the side of Kant.
I don't think so.
Or maybe he was a both and.
He's both.
Yes.
It's more nuanced because you see, this is the interesting thing when you look at, there are aspects of truth and aspects of error, and then you need the collective to see the whole, and then it's a self-correcting thing. But it's really been lovely to chat with you, and I look forward to future times with us. But we'll have all the time in the world.
That's
Yes, we will. This has been a delight for us. You don't even understand. It's a very encouraging for us, and something that we've prayed about, and this time has been like, wouldn't you agree? It's been something from the Lord from us, and we can't wait.
Yeah,
to spend
I
time
want you
with
to receive it as an encouragement that you're doing a good work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And many will be transformed. And you can't see. God has designed it such that most of our impact will be intentionally hidden from us, because if we saw the results, we'd live for them.
That's right.
That's right. But it's going to be well worth your while, and I think that God's called you to that great ministry, and so the best is yet to come.
Amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ken.
Amen. I look forward to seeing you face to face.
Yes,
Same.
absolutely.
We do too.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you for being a part of the Explorers podcast. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.